Two people can earn the same salary, live in the same city, and still make two completely different financial decisions. One rents, one buys. 10 years later, the gap between them can be surprisingly large. And it isn't always the direction people assume. This isn't a story about which choice is right. It's a story about the numbers most people never actually run before making one of the biggest financial decisions of their life. Maria Chen is 31, works as a UX designer in Denver, Colorado. After taxes, that's roughly $5,100 a month. She has $42,000 in savings, no credit card debt, and a modest student loan payment of $180 a month that she factors into her budget but doesn't lose sleep over. Right now, she pays $1,650 a month for a one-bedroom apartment near downtown. She's lived in Denver for 4 years and expects to stay at least another 5. But her job allows partial remote work, and a promotion could realistically mean relocating within a few years. That uncertainty matters more to this story than it might seem right now. She's saved enough for a down payment. The question she's actually trying to answer is simpler than should I buy a house. It's, does buying make sense for someone in her specific situation on her specific timeline? Renting looks simple on the surface, $1,650 a month. Rent increases are common. Historically, U.S. apartment rents have risen somewhere around 3 to 5% a year, though this varies significantly by city and market conditions. If Maria's rent rises 4% annually, her monthly payment could be closer to $2,000 within 5 years. There's a security deposit, typically 1 month's rent, $1,650 that sits with the landlord rather than earning anything for her. Renter's insurance adds roughly $15 a month, cheap compared to what's coming in the ownership comparison. What renting doesn't include is any responsibility for maintenance. A broken water heater, a leaking roof, a dying furnace. None of that is her problem or her bill. What renting also doesn't include is any equity. Every rent payment she makes goes to her landlord permanently, with nothing coming back to her later. But here's the number most rent versus by comparison skip. What happens to the $42,000 she isn't using as a down payment? If she keeps renting, that money could sit in a retirement account or a diversified index fund. Historically, U.S. stock market returns have averaged somewhere in the range of 7 to 10% annually over long periods, though returns vary significantly year to year and are never guaranteed. If that $42,000 grew at even a conservative rate over 10 years, it could be worth meaningfully more than the amount she started with. An invisible number that rarely gets weighed against the emotional appeal of owning a home. Now the other side. A comparable condo or small townhome in Maria's part of Denver runs around $420,000. A 10% down payment would be $42,000, nearly all of her savings. That leaves a mortgage of roughly $378,000. At an interest rate around 6.5% on a 30-year fixed mortgage, the principal and interest payment alone comes to approximately $2,390 a month. Already about $740 more than her current rent, before anything else is added. Property taxes in the Denver area might run around $300 a month, depending on the property's assessed value. Homeowner's insurance adds roughly $120 a month. If the property has an HOA, common for condos and townhomes, that could be another $200 to $300 a month. Maintenance is where a lot of first-time buyers underestimate the real cost. A common rule of thumb is budgeting 1% of the home's value per year for repairs and upkeep. For Maria's $420,000 home, that's around $4,200 a year, or $350 a month, some years more, some years less. Add it up, and Maria's realistic total monthly cost of ownership is closer to $3,360, more than double her current rent. Then there's the cost of simply buying the home in the first place. Closing costs typically run 2 to 5% of the purchase price. For Maria, somewhere between $8,400 and $21,000. Combined with her down payment, she could need $50,000 to $63,000 just to get through closing day. She only has $42,000. This is the moment the math actually changes Maria's plan. She isn't short by a small margin. She's short by potentially $8,000 to $21,000, depending on the exact property and closing costs. Buying right now, with her current savings, isn't simply a lifestyle choice. A smaller down payment is an option. Many conventional loans allow as little as 3 to 5% down. But a lower down payment usually means private mortgage insurance, an additional monthly cost that continues until she reaches 20% equity, often adding $150 to $250 a month until that threshold is met. So the real decision in front of Maria isn't just rent or buy. It's buy now with a thinner financial cushion, or wait and buy later with a stronger one. There's a concept real estate analysts often call the break-even horizon. The number of years it typically takes for the cost of buying, including closing costs, to be offset by building equity and any home value appreciation compared to the cost of renting. In some U.S. housing markets, analysts estimate that buying may take several years before its upfront and ongoing costs are offset relative to renting. But the time frame varies significantly with local prices, interest rates, transaction costs, and changes in home values. Maria expects to stay in Denver at least 5 years, right at the edge of that typical break-even range. But her job's flexibility means a move for a promotion is a real possibility, not a hypothetical one. If she buys and relocates in 3 years, transaction costs alone, the same closing costs on the way in, plus realtor commissions on the way out, often 5 to 6% of the sale price, could mean she loses money on the purchase even if the home's value stayed flat or rose slightly. If she stays 7 or 8 years, the math could look meaningfully different, with home equity and potential appreciation working in her favor. The uncertainty isn't a flaw in Maria's planning, it's simply real. Career paths change, and nobody can know today, with certainty, where they'll be in 5 years. Laid side by side, neither option is free of trade-offs. Renting means a lower, more predictable monthly cost right now. Full flexibility to relocate without financial penalty, no responsibility for repairs, and the ability to invest the difference between renting and owning. An amount that could grow meaningfully over time, though never with guaranteed returns. And the stability of a fixed principal and interest payment that doesn't rise with inflation the way rent typically does. But it also means a higher monthly cost today, a large and possibly insufficient upfront cash requirement, ongoing maintenance responsibility, and real financial risk if she needs to sell within just a few years. Neither path is objectively better. The answer depends on factors specific to Maria, how much cash she actually has available, how long she's likely to stay, her tolerance for unpredictable repair costs, and what she could reasonably expect to earn if that same money were invested instead of tied up in a down payment. Given her specific numbers, a down payment that doesn't comfortably cover closing costs, a timeline that sits right at the edge of the typical break-even point, and a career path that could realistically involve relocating, Maria decides to keep renting for now, while continuing to save. This isn't a rejection of homeownership. It's a decision that, for her situation today, renting keeps more flexibility and less financial risk, while she builds a larger cushion, one that could cover both a full down payment and closing costs without leaving her cash strapped the moment she moves in. For someone with a larger existing down payment, a longer, more certain timeline in one city, or a strong preference for the stability of fixed housing costs, the buy decision could reasonably tip the other way, even with the same income and even in the same housing market. That's the part a lot of rent versus buy content skips. The right answer was never a universal one. It was always going to depend on the specific numbers and the specific person behind the decision. Renting isn't wasted money, and buying isn't automatically an investment. Both are simply different ways of paying for housing, with different costs, different risks, and different payoffs that depend heavily on timing. The decision could affect thousands of dollars over time, which is why comparing the actual costs matters before making a long-term housing decision. It was about running the actual numbers, the mortgage, the maintenance, the closing costs, the opportunity cost of the cash, before signing anything.